Hello everyone, back to today's video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video. This will take us to around the 14th of October, so heading into the middle part of the month. We've still got this uncertainty for next week and going up to the middle of October in terms of high pressure being to the east and low pressure being out to the west. Now what that is going to do is going to draw up some quite warm air, so second week of October is likely to be pretty warm with winds from the south or southwest. But just how settled or unsettled it is, there is still quite a bit of uncertainty about that, and it'll come down to the exact detail of areas of low pressure will be moving in from the Atlantic just to the west of the UK, how much influence they have. I think the general theme will be that the north and west will always be most unsettled, get the most rain. The south and the east will always get the driest weather, but even there might be a little bit of wind and rain coming through at times. Heading up to the middle part of October. So, talk about everything that's going on in a second. Just going to say a big thank you to Gazovit's latest donors. So, we've had a donation for Gazovit's from George Richards. Big thank you to George Richards for donating a little bit of money to Gazovit's, and also to Lloyd Gull. Lloyd Gull has also donated some money to Gazovit's. And a big thank you to George and to Lloyd for doing that. It's helping us to pay for our website, so we can keep all of the videos, all of the content, totally free of charge as you want it, so you can watch it all on demand. We won't be going behind paywalls or anything like that. It's just helping us to pay for our website. So over the past few months, we've been asking if you can afford to give us a little donation, please do so via PayPal. I'm on the Gazovit's PayPal page right now. So you've got a PayPal account. This is really simple. You have to do is just sign into your PayPal account and then go to Gazovit's PayPal page. And we linked that on all pages at Gazovit's and in the description box at YouTube. You can give a donation for any amount of money that you would like to donate to Gazovit's. And that's all you need to do, just a one-off donation through PayPal. And that is exactly what George and Lloyd has done. So big thank you to George and to Lloyd for doing that. The other way of donating to Gazovit's is via Patreon. So this is Gazovit's Patreon page just here. Now this is a little bit different because it's an ongoing sort of donation, although of course you can cancel at any time. But it's an ongoing donation on a monthly basis. And you can be anything from $1 a month upwards, so it doesn't have to be a large amount of money, but the point is it's again helping to pay for Gazovit's. We've got 27 patrons so far, trying to get it to 30, and I think we'll get there sooner or later. So a big thank you to all of the patrons and all of the donors for Gazovit's. As I say, it's completely voluntary. You don't have to do this at all. Just an option if you would like to do it. And Gazovit's is primarily ads funded. We get most of our revenue from advertisements. But over the years, ad revenues have been dropping quite a bit. Various reasons for that, which I'm sure you're not particularly interested in. But things like GDPR, which has come in this summer, that's caused a bit of a drop. And also ad blockers there causing a drop in revenue because the more people that have ad blockers, they're not seeing the ads, and so the companies, most of the multinational companies that are paying for the advertisements, they're not spending as much because not as many people are seeing their advertisements, if you see what I mean. So the upshot is ad revenues are declining year on year, and so we need to look at other revenue streams, but we will be keeping the content completely free of charge. We won't be going behind paywalls or anything like that. Through Patreon, you can actually create sort of pay-per-view content, but I wouldn't want to do that. I want to keep all of the videos, all the written posts, everything that you come to expect. I want to keep it all completely on demand and free as you want it. So just big thank you to everybody for becoming patrons and donors for Gazovit's. It's been a huge success. It really is amazing what you've done for Gazovit's over the past few months since we were doing this back in June. And again, a big thank you to George and to Lloyd for becoming the latest donors for Gazovit's. Right, so let's get on with the video. We're going to start off by what's happening in the tropical Atlantic. So we've got two areas of interest still. We've got this yellow X just here down in the Caribbean, and I have got to get my highlighter ready, so I'm going to get that all set up, and then we'll be ready to go. So we had 2 areas of interest in the tropical Atlantic yesterday. We've still got 2 areas of interest in the tropical Atlantic now, so I'm not sure what's happened there either. Let's try and get rid of that and see what we can do. So we've got this yellow X just here down in the Caribbean. Let's see what they're saying about that. That is disturbance 1, and there's a 0% chance of this becoming a cyclone in the next 48 hours. A large cyclone, Gaia, defined by a broad area of low pressure, typical for this time of the year, covers a portion of Central America and the Western Caribbean Sea, and is producing an extensive area of disorganised clouds and thunderstorms. While surface pressures are relatively low in the area, upper level winds are currently not favourable for tropical cyclone formation. Environmental conditions could become less hostile this weekend and early next week, allowing for some slow development as the system drifts north-westward across the northwestern Caribbean Sea and the southern Gulf of Mexico. 0% chance of it becoming a tropical cyclone in the next 48 hours and a 30% chance in the next 5 days. And then we've got Hurricane Leslie up here. Leslie has been meandering around, going nowhere fast for at least a week, probably 10 days or so, and Leslie is currently a Category 1 hurricane, producing sustained winds of 80 miles an hour, gusts probably going over 95 miles an hour. Let's have a look and see what the latest forecast track of Hurricane Leslie is. So this is the current position of Category 1 Hurricane Leslie just there. By the time we get through to Friday and into weekend, Hurricane Leslie is in that kind of position, going back down to a tropical storm, so weakening a little bit as it moves northwards. Early next week, Hurricane Leslie going to be in that sort of position. It's just still meandering around, going nowhere fast, just going round and round in circles, producing these very strong winds and bouts of heavy rain. So currently Category 1 Hurricane Leslie will go down to a tropical storm. We may get some influence from Hurricane Leslie as we go into the latter stages of next week. I talked about that in the video yesterday. The possibility for that is still there, and I'll talk you through how that works again in a moment. Right, going back closer to home, these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, on the bottom. So 500 millibars, 8,000 feet, is an area in the absolute high pressure and low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. Blue extrapolates to low pressure, red to high pressure. So ECMWF has this deep trough of below average heights. It is a really deep trough out to the west of the UK. It's also got a ridge over to the east, and this is the problem. This is what's causing so much uncertainty for this second week of October running up to the middle part of the week, because this, middle part of the month I should say, because this is a big ridge that we've got up here, and this ridge is trying to bring in these easterly winds, but at the same time, the trough of low pressure in the Atlantic is trying to bring us unsettled weather. So there's kind of like a big battle going on between the atmosphere. I mean, the UK is in between really, but deep low in the Atlantic and the ridge over the east and the northeast. Now you can see the wind direction is going to be warm with this, because we're going to be bringing the air up from a southerly to southwesterly direction. So there's no problems with temperatures. The question is just whether it's the low pressure in the Atlantic that's the driver. If it is, then it could actually be quite wet, because this is a deep trough that we've got in the Atlantic now, proper autumnal area of low pressure in the central Atlantic. But if that ridge is the dominating factor in the 7 to 10 day time frame, then actually we'll have quite a bit of dry weather. I suspect what's most likely to happen is that unsettled weather will be up to the north and west of the country, and the driest conditions will tend to be in the south and the southeast. But with such a deep trough in the Atlantic, it's not impossible that we might find the weather systems and the bands of rain getting down to southeast at times. Now the GFS is very similar, but it is stronger with this ridge. So we've still got this deep area of below average heights in the Atlantic, a little bit further south than where the ECMWF has it, and it has this ridge stronger than the ECM as well. This ridge is building in from central and eastern parts of Europe, and so the jet stream is going further north and west compared to the ECM, and more of the country is covered by that ridge of high pressure. So both models are quite warm, because with both models the air is coming up from a south-southwesterly direction through next week, but the GFS is the drier solution of the two, because it's strong with the ridge and it's fending off that deep area of low pressure in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Boston. We're looking at the Lincolnshire town of Boston today. So we're starting off quite warm at the moment. We're going to be going colder at the end of the week and into the weekend. Going to be a cold, wet day, some parts of the country on Saturday, still pretty chilly into Sunday. Early next week, the temperatures are lifting up, and through next week, we do see temperatures going above average. So all models are in agreement about this, that next week is going to be relatively warm as the air is drawn up from a southerly to southwesterly direction. The difference between the models is in how strong the low pressure in the Atlantic is versus the high pressure to the east. But in all scenarios, we're drawing the air up from the south, so it's going to be warm next week. In the extended range, which takes us into and beyond the middle part of October, just signs that the temperatures are lowering a little bit, then going back closer to average. But of course, that's extended range stuff. It's unreliable, so we'll wait and see about that. As far as precipitation is concerned, these are rainfall spikes associated with Saturday's wet weather. After that, plenty of dry weather through next week. Possibly signs that it's turning a bit more unsettled as it's turning cooler into the second half of October. Now, you notice there are precipitation spikes that we see here through next week. So some of those GFS ensembles are getting the rain bands down into the east and the southeast of the country. But we saw it on the height anomaly flowchart that for next week anyway, the GFS is stronger with that ridge of high pressure compared to the ECM WF. But if the ECM is right, it will be more unsettled next week, even in the eastern part of the country, than the GFS is showing. So we still haven't completely sorted things out for next week. Temperature anomalies from the 4th through to the 12th of October are forecast to be a little bit warmer than average through the UK and Ireland. It's a warm scene across most parts of Europe, actually, in the week ahead, to be honest. Precipitation anomalies from the 4th to 12th of October, more or less drier than average through most of the country, a little bit wetter than average from Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Most other places are coming in a little bit drier than average in the week ahead. Although there will be some quite wet weather on Saturday, so let's deal with that first of all. This is the GFS for Saturday. This is 6 o'clock in the morning. We've got a weather front re-intensifying, pepping up through the course of Friday night into Saturday. It's in that sort of position, and it could give quite a bit of wet weather through the course of Saturday. This is the precipitation forecast from the GFS, 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Heavy rain through northern England and down to Wales and southwestern England. That rain only ever so slowly inching southwards and eastwards. So it's a wet old day through the Midlands, parts of Lincolnshire, parts of central southern England. Notice the extreme east of East Anglia and southeast England just about managing to stay dry. But many of those central parts of England have a really wet day with the rain on pretty much all day, to be honest. It does clear across northern England, Wales, and eventually southwestern parts of England, and it'll probably be turning a bit brighter there through the course of Saturday afternoon. For Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's going to be a mainly dry day. And a cold day too. That's the other thing about this. So these are the afternoon temperatures for 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. Now the extreme southeast is still relatively warm at 16 or 17 degrees. But go north of London and it does look really quite cold, especially where we've got those outbreaks of rain. So through parts of Wales and Midlands up to northern England, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, we're forecasting temperatures on Saturday afternoon to be no better than 6 to 8 degrees, which is way below average. It's more like sort of an early December afternoon compared to an early October afternoon. And it will be a shock to this because it's pretty warm at the moment, and tomorrow will be pretty warm as well for much of England and Wales. So a real shock to the system if these temperatures are right, with those persistent outbreaks of rain on Saturday afternoon. And then as the rain clears, it turns really cold on Saturday night. So these are the minimum temperatures by 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. A widespread frost for Scotland, coming down through northern England into Wales. Many places hovering around freezing, so that's air frost levels. Ground frost likely through the Midlands in some central southern parts of England. It's only really East Anglia, South East England where the temperatures are still holding up. That's because it takes a while to push the cloud of rain away from the extreme southeastern corner. Also a frost possible for much of Ireland as well. So a very cold night to come on Saturday night. There may be some dense fog patches around with that as well. So that's how things are looking with the GFS at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Building this ridge in from the Atlantic. It'll be mainly dry but cold. Turning wet and windy in the north and west through the course of Sunday. That lasting into Monday. England away is still under the high pressure, so mainly dry. Then early next week, we saw it on the high-thermal flow charts. We've got this high pressure to our east, but it is ridging into the south and east, bringing mainly dry weather to southern and eastern parts of the country. But in the northwest, it does look rather unsettled with outbreaks of rain. Just here, far left-hand corner of the chart, as you're looking at it, that is the remains of what is at the moment Hurricane Leslie. We go through to Thursday, and actually we're deep in this area of low pressure in the Atlantic. So Thursday could be a bit wet and windy, and some of that rain might get through even to the eastern and southeastern part of the country on Thursday. Then we're going into Friday, and that is the remains of Hurricane Leslie just there. Another deep area of low pressure just there, by the way. So things looking increasingly active and buoyant in the Atlantic. But as it is, actually southern and eastern parts of the country find themselves dominated by this high pressure sit across central Europe. So bring the air up from the south. Much of southeastern England, southern England mainly dry and potentially very warm here as you're heading up to day 10. This is Saturday 13th of October, and I think temperatures, if that came off, would be approaching low 20s Celsius most definitely. But in the north and west it looks wet. We've got low pressure very close to us. That's the remains of Hurricane Leslie just there, and that does look like it could bring some wet and windy weather to Scotland and Ireland in particular. Through the course of this weekend of 13th, 14th of October, we move this weather system across the country as a weakening feature, but it would pull in cooler air as it clears away from the north and from the west. In the extended range with this GFS run, it then turns much more unsettled into the second half of October, and a lot cooler as well. We're losing those warm southerly southwesterly winds. We're turning the wind direction into the west or northwest. There's bands of rain moving through, and temperatures are much lower through the third week of October. But that is uncertain. It's in the unreliable time frame. ECMWF looks like that. This is Sunday. And again, we're building this ridge in as we get rid of that weather that brings us a cold, wet day on Saturday. There is Hurricane, or remains of Hurricane Leslie over there, far left-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. Early next week, it's unsettled to the north and west with low pressure, bringing cloud, wind and rain there. England and Wales mainly dry, quite chilly initially, but slowly but surely temperatures lift up through to middle part of the week in the south and the southeast. And then going to the second half of next week, again, looks like it's turning a bit more unsettled than the models were showing yesterday for this middle and second half of next week. So this is Friday, 12th of October, where we've got quite a deep area of low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. The ridge is a lot weaker. We saw it on the high anomaly flow charts. The ECM is not building in that ridge as much from the east. And so that does actually look quite unsettled as we're going into the second half of next week. Bears for remains of Hurricane Leslie just down there. And we go into the extended range up to day 10, and it just looks rather unsettled, really. Low pressure is out in the Atlantic. The ridge is much further east compared to the GFS. It's back across western parts of Russia over here. It is exerting an influence because we're bringing up the air from a southerly direction generally, but the ECM is a more unsettled situation and scenario for the second half of next week and running into that weekend of 13th, 14th of October. Never brings us the remains of Hurricane Leslie, you'll notice, even up to day 10. So that is still, that low pressure down there is still Leslie just meandering around, going nowhere far. So GFS does bring the remains of Hurricane Leslie close to us in the second half of next week. The ECM keeps that push down in the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. And then finally, we've got the GEM. So again, we've got this ridge building in through Sunday, bringing us quite a cold out, that wet day on Saturday. Monday, England and Wales at a high pressure, mostly dry, quite chilly, wet and windy for Scotland and for Northern Ireland. Through the course of next week, again, we're seeing this all week with the GM. It's more unsettled. So this is up to Thursday next week, and low pressure is the driving factor from off the Atlantic as opposed to that ridge over to the eastern side of Europe. The GM just gradually turns things more and more unsettled really as we get to day 10. Still in an unsettled scenario. Low pressure just to our west, throwing up showers or longer spells of rain. Again, GM never brings us the remains of Hurricane Leslie. And what all models are in agreement, though, with is that the wind is from a south or southwesterly direction. So all models are in agreement that next week is quite warm. Up to the middle part of the month, temperatures are holding up okay, except that cold day on Saturday. But it's just how unsettled it's going to be through the course of next week. But I think we've got some discrepancies over. Finally, I'll just finish off with CFS V2 700 millibar height anomaly for the winter of 2018-19. Still go for a westerly winter. It has above average heights to our south, middle of the Atlantic, below average heights to the north. The jet stream coming across the Atlantic like that, and so CFS V2 still going for that westerly, mild, probably quite unsettled zonal type winter. No change yet from the CFS with its winter forecast. I don't think we worry too much about that because we've got uncertainty for next week. So what we can say about next week's weather is that the first part of the week looks fairly straightforward. For England and Wales, mostly dry, starting quite chilly, gradually warming up by Wednesday. Scotland and Northern Ireland looking more unsettled through the early part of next week, with wet and windy weather at times. Looks like it's probably going to be some sort of wet and windy spell around Wednesday or Thursday. So that could affect even eastern parts of the country. Beyond that, as we go into that weekend of 13th, 14th of October, that's where we've got a lot of uncertainty within the model output. Will that ridge to our east bring us a mainly dry and very warm weekend, or will it just turn rather unsettled and cooler? The second half of October possibly shaping up to turn cooler and more unsettled, but that's a long way off, and I think we've got to get next week's weather sorted out before we worry too much about the third week of October. So a lot going on. We're keeping you updated over the next few days at Gull's Office. Come back tomorrow for the latest terms of a week to 10 day update. And also tomorrow we'll have JMA Friday, as always, your month head, look ahead. We'll be with you tomorrow. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.